Hello, I'm Crow Spaceboy from Shoryuken.com, and this is a video review for the game SoulCalibur VI. Now, this video review is a companion to a two-part editorial that I wrote for the website. It's not a narration of the review as much as it is a recontextualization of it, because the editorial was built on the pre-release build. We've been updated to version 1.01 since then, and I've had some time to think about the game, things that I maybe think a little bit differently about, things I like, dislike, etc. So let's go ahead and just jump right in. So it probably helps to give some context about my relationship with the SoulCalibur series. SoulCalibur II is what got me into the FGC. It has a very special place in my heart, and SoulCalibur 3, 4, and 5, doesn't. And that's fine. We don't have time to break down contextually what's right and wrong about every single SoulCalibur game, but I think it helps to know where I'm coming from, that I have an obvious bias that's going to make me think about this game in a very particular way. So when this game got announced, they announced that they were looking very heavily towards SoulCalibur 2 for inspiration. And they were wanting to focus on the speed and the game feel of that game, and that made me very excited. Those were words that I wanted to believe very badly. So we don't have to guess anymore as to whether or not they actually meant what they say. It's here! SoulCalibur VI is here. I didn't think I'd live to see it. The question now is, were they being truthful? Is this a heir to SoulCalibur 2? Is it closer to SoulCalibur 5? Is it even a SoulCalibur game? The answer to all of those questions is yes, sort of. And I know how irritating it must be to have sort of a half answer like that, but it really is the best summary of the game, because it takes disparate parts of almost every single SoulCalibur game that has ever existed and mashes them together, sometimes with great success and sometimes a little flaccidly. One area that it's unquestionably inspired by SoulCalibur 2, and really the key point that they always hammered on in interviews, particularly Motohiro Okubo. Just about the only specific thing he would ever say in interviews is that the speed was like SoulCalibur 2, and that made me very dubious if he had played SoulCalibur 2, because it was the only thing he ever said about the game was that it was fast. And you know what? How dare I, because he was right. This is definitely the fastest moving game I have played in the SoulCalibur series since 2, and it's kind of funny to say that, because SoulCalibur 2 wasn't a fast game in the long run because of the glitches that were discovered over time. The only thing that was really fast in SoulCalibur 2 was the way they intended it to be played, the actual movement speed. And since those defensive glitches are not in this game, I'm specifically referring to Step G, for those of you that don't know. I wrote an article about it a long time ago. I'll put a link somewhere in there. But by combining the SoulCalibur 2 fast movement speed with the SoulCalibur 5 defensive system, where you have guard crushes and meter and things like that, the pace is frantic. It's really crazy. And another aspect that's actually carried over from SoulCalibur 2 is that every single character has a way to open you up with like a fast frame advantage low of some kind. Raphael has a low that's frame advantage on hit that you cannot see on reaction. I don't even remember the last time I was able to say those words about that character, and regardless of where he ends up on the tier list, just the fact that they finally listened to this request for the first time since, what, 2005 or something like that, it's very kind of them. It's very, very kind of them to give old Raffy boy a low. And every character has something like that. And they're all unique, fairly so. Taki technically doesn't have a low that opens you up. Everything that she does incredible chip damage. Sungmina has a new full-screen zoning low. Ivy has some things that might not be good for the competitive environment, but at least they're unique! I'm being somewhat facetious. I don't ever like to pass judgment too quickly, but whew boy. And that unblockable summon suffering and that low combined with 6-6A, It's going to be interesting to see how the meta develops around those. And if the pacing were the only kind thing I had to say about it, that would still be totally fine. It would be a wonderful SoulCalibur game. There's actually more. There is a new mechanic called lethal hits, which is a interesting and unique way for developers to, as rigidly as they can, control the way you play a character while still making it seem fresh and interesting. I was really impressed by lethal hits at first. Like, my description of it sounds demeaning, but I actually think it's kind of awesome. So basically, what it is you get new combo opportunities when you do very specific actions that are unique to your character. For example, Cervantes' air throw becomes a lethal hit and gets a new combo extension only when he's used gun techniques 12 times in a game. That's weird and ridiculous, and not something I can immediately think of that has like a clear parallel to another game. It's like every character has their own very unique set of subsystems that you have to go into like training mode and study up on to even know about it. There is a problem here in the sense that some characters just have very stupidly easy lethal hits to activate. Ivy's 2-2A, for example, just works, as does Mitsu's. Like, basically, if they just whiff punish something, they just get a lethal hit. Meanwhile, Raphael, like, he has to only get a lethal hit when he whiff punishes with the same type of attack that is the attack that is being whiffed. So, like, other characters are sitting there and doing, like, addition, and Raphael's over there like doing trigonometry, trying to figure out what attack he needs to do in order to whiff punish something. It's just kind of, it makes you wonder. It makes you wonder how this is going to end up over time. Ah, I see it's Tuesday. It's time for me to get a lethal hit. Lethal hits are not the only subsystem that color the way you think about a character in SoulCalibur VI, though. There is the Soul Charge system. Now, Soul Charge is a system that has existed before in SoulCalibur. I, in fact, made a video about it on our Crowbite series. However, it is fundamentally completely different in this game. Before, it was just a mode that you manually charged up. Now, you can think of it like a install super for every character. You spend a bar and you get this powered up state for a limited amount of time where you just get blatantly more powerful moves, and for some characters, it's exceedingly powerful to the extent where you're probably spending all your time basing your game plan around Soul Charge. I don't think this is either good or bad. I'm having fun with the system right now. I think it's going to just be important. We won't know until further down the line exactly how busted this could be for some characters, but I am going to make a incredibly not bold prediction and just say this is going to be the single most important mechanic of SoulCalibur VI, and you know what? I like it. It adds variety. It's way more interesting than just doing a super, and it gives different characters different ways to do things. It's also an interesting way to get out of Oki, which in a weird way makes it a little bit closer to SoulCalibur 2, because SoulCalibur 2, you could do like anything off the ground, and Okazumi was not as strong in that game as it was in later SoulCaliburs, so I'm intrigued by it. I'm excited to see how this develops. It's very similar to Poken's burst mode, and the fact that Mr. Hoshino has worked on both games is not surprising in the least that these mechanics are similar to each other. And that leaves one incredibly divisive mechanic left to talk about, and that is the Reversal Edge system. Reversal Edge, it's a chargeable, armor-using attack. It's basically this game's interpretation of focus attack. And if you land it, you get a whole bunch of meter. You get even more meter if you actually armor attacks with it. And all of that is fine. All of that is 100% fine, and there's no problem with that mechanic. And if that was all that I had to say about Reversal Edge, I would probably not spend any more time talking about it. But there's more. When you land a Reversal Edge, you go into a rock, paper, scissors cutscene, where you and your opponent pick one option, a bunch of lights swirl around you, and whoever wins the rock, paper, scissors gets to deal even more damage, regardless of who picked it. If you both trade on the first section, you go into a second version of Reversal Edge, and then if you select the same option again, then the person that initiated the Reversal Edge wins. My problem with Reversal Edge is that it is a significant dumbing down of the game, and it's a significant dumbing down of the game in a way that halts the pace of the game. We mentioned earlier how the movement is so good in this game, how the pace has finally quickened for the first time in years, that there's a real breath of life and freshness, and all that pace, all that momentum, all that mobility just immediately sacrificed for the sake of a gimmicky mobile game that most people don't even like. I apologize for the confirmation bias, but most conversations that I have about this mechanic are not positive. I don't understand its place in this system. If you take out Reversal Edge from this game, you still have the exact same defensive options with Guard Impact, and maybe with like 1 or 2 incredibly minor tweaks at most to the game engine, you have virtually the same game, but better. Now, I'm a man out in the wilderness. I understand that this is not... this single opinion that I have is apparently the most controversial thing, and I've learned that. That's fine. That's the nature of being a game journalist, I guess. But I can't defend it. When I play SoulCalibur, it's not to play a mobile game, and that's all this feels like. It feels like I'm playing some other genre of game that I did not sign up for, and the reward can be potentially very crazy. So you could initiate a Reversal Edge, then lose on round 2, and not only have you wasted like 30 seconds of your life looking at this terrible mechanic, but you can also just die. You took the risk of Reversal Edge, were right, and then were wrong in a phone game and ate like a round 2 Reversal Edge option in the Super. It's something. You know, you might look at this and think it's super cool, and if you do, great. Go buy SoulCalibur VI, because this is my biggest problem with the game, and if you like this mechanic, I guarantee you'll love everything else, because I don't think that there's really a whole lot else bad to say about SoulCalibur VI. But this will be probably the most divisive thing in the game, by far. Now luckily, I am someone that's able to look past one single flaw. If I discarded every single game because they had one single mechanic that I didn't like, I wouldn't like SoulCalibur 2. You know, SoulCalibur 2 is my favorite fighting game. I hate the avoid system in it. I think the avoid system was a disastrous mechanic that should not appear in any other SoulCalibur system. And yet, I love the game. It's because it's just one small part of a much larger engine, and that's the kindest thing that I have to say about Reversal Edge. The actual like charging attack part, the armor part, all of that's fine. You know, you can react to the startup animation of a Reversal Edge. It's actually very simple once you get used to the animation. It's really just the mobile cutscene that I don't enjoy. Okay, I talked about the bad thing. Let's talk about some good things now. New characters. There's 3 new characters in this game: Aswell, Grow, and the guest character Geralt. And I think they're all expertly designed. I think they're all incredibly interesting. I have a very long rant about how cool I think Aswell is. I'm not going to rehash that, but it's in the editorial if you want to read it. I'll just simply say this, though. I think that the moveset designs in this game are some of the most imaginative and interesting that we have seen in the series for a very long time, and I think for the most part they're very successful. There's a few things that I would personally like to change here and there. I don't think balance talk has any place in a review, and I don't think it really should be discussed this early. But I do have my own opinions, and maybe we'll get to those someday. They'll probably change about 200 times before I even get around to thinking about making that video, though. I'm very pleased overall with the cast as it is right now, with the exception of the fact that Tira is paid DLC for a game that's supposed to be a tournament. I'm sorry, I just don't like the business practice of DLC in fighting games. It's still worth it. It's still worth to play. It's just incredibly disappointing that Namco has fallen the way that other companies have as well. I'm happy to report that since the the version 1.01 has come out for SoulCalibur 6. I've had none of the game crashing that occurred in the recording function of training mode, and training mode does almost everything that I want it to do, so I have very little negative to say about it. The only negative things I still really have is that there's still a bug with selecting moves where if you put the dummy in a guard state, or if you put them in a state that leaves them in crouch, they will stand back up and then do the move. That's obviously silly and needs to be fixed. Also, it seems like the standby function for the training mode sometimes just blatantly doesn't work. I will frequently, if I use that function, just not get matches forever. And then if I exit that mode and then go just directly to network mode, I'll immediately get a match. So yeah, there's something weird going on there. It's not perfect, but it is a lot better than it was during the pre-release copy. So kudos. I'm glad that I can record moves, and that's just about all I really wanted to do anyways, is just to be able to test things. And on that note, my online experience has been pretty fantastic. Now, I should let you know that I pay for 200 down, 20 up, so there's a really good chance that your mileage may vary from mine. But the experience I've had is very good post-release. I'm definitely getting more matches than I was, which makes sense, is just there's more people playing the game. So we're an outlet that's specifically dedicated to the competitive aspect of fighting games, but it would behoove me not to mention the more casual aspects of this game, of which I understand are a very big draw. Now, you might find people that are more forgiving of some of the problems in this game on other websites. I'm just being completely honest with you. I think it's a mixed bag overall. I do think that there are some interesting things in the casual side of this game. I like museum mode. I like the fact that there's lots of unlockables. I think character creator is great, although I think that there's some weird limitations on it where there are 12 races. That's really cool. However, some races don't know how to wear hot pants. Skeletons can't wear hot pants, but they can wear dresses. I made a longer, elaborate rant on this the article that I'm hoping paints the goofy picture that I'm trying to show you. But my real problem is there's two story modes. One of them's fine. Soul Chronicle, it's great. I found myself invested. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about it because the bar for fighting game plot lines is very low. Don't want to spoil anything, but I will tell you that there were story arcs that I actually found incredibly interesting and gripping. Astaroth's in particular, I really super enjoyed his story. I think that there was a character arc there for a character that I thought was irredeemably evil. I certainly didn't expect that, and I'm still thinking about things that I enjoyed in that story, you know, days later. That it holds up. That's not something I ever expected to say about a fighting game plot. The other mode, though, Libra Souls, does not. This is one of the driest, most boring modes I've ever played. Now, you probably, if you liked SoulCalibur III's, I think it's Chronicle of the Soul, you're gonna probably like this as well. It's an RPG mode where you travel a map and you do RPG quests, but your battles are going to be against AI-controlled enemies. I don't enjoy that. I don't enjoy fighting AIs that are dumb as rocks. I don't enjoy bland, boring writing, and I don't enjoy writing that doesn't even take into account the one thing that's interesting about this mode, which is your created character. You know, right out of the gate, you can find out exactly how much time they took crafting this experience around whatever you do in the game. The very first interaction that you have is with Zasalamel, who is like, boy howdy, aren't you glad that I showed up and saved you from being a Malfested? If you pick a fully Malfested character, he says the exact same line to you. And that is indicative of every experience that you will have in this game. Your choices do not matter. They don't shape the world in any way, shape, or form. Maybe they do in hour 97 of this mode. I'll never know because I was too busy being bored by the terrible writing in hours 1 and 2. I gave up. It didn't hold me the way Soul Chronicle did. It really doesn't help any that most of the time you're staring at a limited color palette, like white and sepia toned background with very tiny text, but tiny text that like comes in very short sentences that you have to go through one at a time. It's definitely not going to appeal to people that like reading. Haruki Murakami, this is not... I don't know who this mode is for. I really don't. It's clearly not for me. Maybe it's for you. If you're able to look past the writing and you just enjoy the actual like the RPG mechanical part of this, it does eventually get interesting. You start getting to a point where your health carries over between battles and you have to start managing your items. That part I can see genuine interest and fun in, and maybe that part is for you. I could understand that. Otherwise, I find this mode almost completely irredeemable. And it especially does not help. I almost forgot to mention this, and I mentioned this in the article too. My hatred hasn't subsided for this. Lizard Man is in the game. He is a completely finished move list. He's an NPC that you run into very frequently. There are people out there that probably main this character exclusively because he does functionally play differently than everyone else in the game, especially if you consider that he has things like crawl stance in SoulCalibur 3, his wing stance in 5. Like, he is a functionally interesting and different character, and Namco does not care. They have shoved him into this NPC mode. You can't even play as him with the season pass. I'm suspecting that this will not be the case for much longer. It would be very stupid of them to make a moveset and then not have it be like even a DLC thing at some point. But to put that in there and then just give like a giant middle finger to everyone that has ever wanted to play as Lizard Man, it's amazing. It is a bold move. And overall, that's it. I think it's a great game. I think it's the best SoulCalibur game that we've had since SoulCalibur 2, even despite its flaws. Part of that is because I have a reasonably low opinion of later entries in the series, but you know what? Who cares? What matters is the present, and I actually think that the present looks very good for the game. All Namco has to do at this point is keep improving. Tekken 7 worked very well with that model. Everything that they did for Tekken 7 from release until now has been a step forward for the most part. They've treated that series with respect in terms of how they've improved it since release. There's no reason why they can't do the same for SoulCalibur 6. Will they? I don't know. That is on Namco at this point. But if you've ever liked swinging a sword in a video game, I see no reason for you not to play this game. If you like just making, creating things in video games, I actually think this mode is very good. I imagine this probably has broad appeal to people that like wrestling games and like making, creator wrestlers, and that this functions in a very similar way, and you can do wildly interesting things. It is amazing the creativity that some people were able to push out with this thing. That's all. I hope to see you online if you do happen to get it, and I hope that you enjoy SoulCalibur 6 as much as I am, maybe even more so.